On the night of February 21, 2006, in the quiet town of Tonbridge, England, a plot unfolded that would change the way the world thought about security. A group of masked men, armed with meticulous planning, military precision, and terrifying psychological tactics, executed a heist so daring that it instantly entered the history books. They didn't just steal money. They stole trust. Trust in armored depots, trust in the system, trust in safety itself. This was the Securitas depot heist, the largest cash robbery in British history, $92 million in untraceable banknotes, gone in a single night. But what makes this crime more chilling is not just the money. It's the human factor, kidnapped families, inside betrayals, and the lingering question: how could something so impossible be pulled off so cleanly? To understand how the heist became possible, we need to step into Tonbridge, Kent, a sleepy commuter town. At the edge of town stood the Securitas depot, a fortress-like cash handling facility where banks sent their money for sorting and redistribution. By 2006, the depot was responsible for handling hundreds of millions of pounds each week. The building was designed like a prison. Reinforced steel doors, multiple CCTV layers, perimeter fences. But even the strongest fortress is only as secure as the people who run it. Inside the depot, Colin Dixon, the 52-year-old depot manager, was the key to everything. He knew the layout, the schedules, and the protocols. What he didn't know was that he had already become the target of professional criminals. The gang behind the robbery wasn't made up of small-time crooks. They were seasoned, connected, and ruthless, men with ties to organized crime across Europe. For months, they watched Dixon, noting his every move. They studied the depot's routines. They looked for cracks in the armor. And they found them, not in the steel, not in the locks, but in human vulnerability. The plan would not just be a robbery. It would be a psychological war. On that cold February evening, Colin Dixon was driving home when he noticed flashing blue lights in his rearview mirror. A police car pulled him over. Two officers approached, uniforms crisp, flashing lights painting the night sky. But these weren't officers. They were imposters. The fake police told Dixon there was a problem with his car. Before he could react, he was handcuffed and forced into their vehicle. His world had changed in an instant. Simultaneously, another part of the gang targeted his family. His wife and young daughter were held hostage at gunpoint. Dixon was driven to a secluded farmhouse, where he was told in chilling detail: "If you cooperate, your family lives. If you resist, they die." The message was clear: the robbery was no longer about locks and vaults. It was about fear. For the next several hours, the criminals rehearsed their plan with Dixon as their unwilling pawn. They forced him to walk them through the depot's routines, the location of keys, and the timing of staff. The gang didn't need to fight their way into the depot. They would walk in the front door, with Dixon as their key. At around 1 a.m., a white van pulled up to the gates of the Securitas depot. Inside sat Colin Dixon, visibly shaken, flanked by heavily armed men in masks. When the guard at the gate recognized Dixon, he didn't hesitate. He opened the gate. After all, why would the depot manager arrive in the middle of the night unless something was wrong? What the guard didn't know was that he had just opened the doors to one of the largest robberies in history. The gang moved with chilling efficiency. They rounded up the staff, 14 employees in total, and tied them up with plastic zip ties. Some were forced to lie on the cold floor, while others were herded into break rooms. Guns were waved, threats whispered: "Stay quiet, or your families will pay." The depot, once a fortress, was now under the control of a criminal army. With staff subdued, the gang turned to the vault. This was where the real prize lay: pallets of freshly printed banknotes, waiting to be delivered to banks across the country. The vault itself wasn't a Hollywood-style puzzle box. It was a secure room, yes, but with Dixon present, access was granted without alarms. Inside, the criminals worked methodically. Pallet after pallet of cash was loaded into the waiting truck. The sheer volume was staggering: $92 million in bills. The money was so much that even the gang couldn't take it all. They physically ran out of space. Meanwhile, the employees sat in silence, watching millions vanish before their eyes. Some prayed. Some cried. But none dared resist. The entire operation lasted just under 2 hours. And then, just as quickly as they had arrived, the criminals vanished into the night. The gang's convoy of vehicles sped through Kent's quiet roads. Headlights half on, moving like shadows. They had military precision, using pre-arranged routes and switching vehicles multiple times to avoid detection. Back at the depot, terrified staff finally freed themselves and called police. By the time law enforcement arrived, the criminals were long gone. News of the robbery spread like wildfire. By morning, headlines screamed, "Biggest cash robbery in British history." The public was stunned. If even the most secure cash depot in the country could be breached, was anything safe? But for the gang, the real challenge was just beginning. Stealing $92 million is one thing. Laundering it without getting caught is another. At first, the gang celebrated. They had pulled off the impossible. But cracks quickly began to show. The sheer size of the haul was a problem. Moving that much cash without attracting attention was nearly impossible. Police launched a massive investigation, Kent's largest in history. Hundreds of officers worked around the clock, analyzing CCTV, interviewing witnesses, tracing vehicles. Within days, they found abandoned getaway vans, some still containing traces of cash. Forensics teams pounced. DNA, fingerprints, fibers, all began to paint a picture of who was behind the crime. Meanwhile, the criminals themselves struggled with paranoia. Arguments broke out. Who would hold the money? Who would control the laundering? Trust began to fray. And as in so many heists, betrayal became inevitable. The investigation zeroed in on key suspects, including professional criminals with known ties to organized gangs. Raids across London and Kent uncovered hidden stashes of money, weapons, and disguises. Arrests followed. Trials dragged out for years. Some were convicted, others walked free. But the biggest question remained unanswered. Where did all the money go? Of the $92 million stolen, only a fraction was ever recovered. The rest disappeared into the shadows. Laundered through international networks, vanished into offshore accounts, or hidden in safe houses. For the employees of the Securitas depot, the scars ran deeper than money. They had lived through a night of terror, forced at gunpoint, bound and silenced. For them, the crime was not a story of millions stolen, but of fear, trauma, and broken trust. The Securitas depot heist remains one of the most audacious robberies in history. It was a crime built not on brute force but on psychological manipulation, meticulous planning, and the exploitation of human weakness. But its legacy is more than just missing millions. It serves as a reminder that no matter how secure the walls, no matter how strong the locks, the greatest vulnerabilities are always human. And somewhere out there, decades later, the unanswered question still hangs in the air. Who truly holds the missing millions from the Securitas depot heist?